Do you use word prediction on your mobile phones? You know, when you start typing, these words come up, you don't remember the spelling, you click on it. Do you use that? Raise your hands. Okay. Do you speak to your computer? Do you tell your mobile phone, call mom? If you call, use that? Raise your hand. The room is using that. Okay. When you watch English movies, do you switch on captioning because you can't understand the language very well? If you do, raise your hand. 100%. I'm impressed. Now, let's ask a very interesting question. Do you believe you have a disability? If you do, raise your hands. Can I tell you something? All the other people that raised their hands were actually using technology that's been developed for people with disabilities. Speech recognition was developed for people with disabilities. Voice recognition was developed for people who couldn't use their hands. Computers spoke for blind people, right? But who's using that? It makes our life easier. But when we think of people with disabilities, we don't think of them as us. We think of them as them. That's a problem, right? When we come to a movie theater, they don't have access. When they go to a bank, they don't have access. When they use a mobile app, they don't have access, right? But they're the ones that all this cool technology was created for, not you. In this world is we're going digital. And as we're going digital, we're leaving people behind. Do you know how many people we're leaving behind? 1 billion people in the world have a disability. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 1 lakh, not 1 million. 1 billion people in the world have a disability, right? But we are creating an inaccessible world for them. We are creating this world where they can't do what we can do. But on the other side, we want, or we believe we want, to create an inclusive world where everybody can do everything. The definition of the word everyone is skewed. We had Sir earlier on talk about statistics and sustainable development goals. It's skewed. We actually don't look at this billion. This billion is forgotten. This billion is hidden. This billion is left behind. And that's what we do. We try to give them an opportunity. So when I started Barrier Break, one of the most interesting things that happened to me was, this is not the kind of internet you all are used to. You all are used to this fabulous looking interface. We had this DOS interface. It was internet relay chat. You typed. There was no video. There was no picture also at most time, right? And at that time, one of the things that happened for us was I landed up getting intrigued by the world of hacking, and he offered me a job for a US company, and I worked with him for 2 years. In this period, this man taught me everything of hacking. To be a hacker, you've got to be fast. It's like stealing, right? You have a person breaking into your house, you need to be faster than him. So you really need to be fast. And then on one day on a shift, I caught the hacker and he didn't. And I asked him, I said, what happened? And we used to work on Macs at that time. And he actually told me, he said, I haven't told you this, but I met with an accident in my life and I was paralyzed, right? And I was dumbfounded. And I was like, what? So when I thought of disability at that time and paralysis, I thought of somebody who couldn't do very much, right? I thought of somebody who was slow. And here this man was telling me that he used his head to move his mouse pointer, and he used his breath to control his computer. And I was like, wow. So, since he knew me, he turned around and told me, he says, I think you need to look at technology for people with disabilities. I think that was the turning point. I went on to set up the first computer training center in India for the visually impaired, but very early realized that we always thought of disability as charity. We always wanted to give them the least, not the most. We always wanted to give them just enough to make us feel good that we did, not what they really deserved, or not what you and I had. They yet got the same job. They got a job of a telephone operator, of a clerk in a bank. Why not a branch manager, right? So I basically said, if I had to do this differently, what would I do? The first thing I'd do is I'd drop the word charity. So Barry Break is a for-profit social enterprise, and I'm so proud that Ashoka recognized us for that and gave me an Ashoka fellowship. The second thing that we did was, we said that we would hire people with disabilities. Today we are a team of 150 of us. 70% of us have a disability, right? Is that doable? Yes, come over. The third thing that we did was, we said, we are going to help others to make technology accessible. We said, there's so many technology companies out there. Do we want to replace them? No. Do we want to help them make their solutions disabled-friendly and inclusive? Yes. And that's what we did. And can you believe it? In 2001, when I finally started working in this area as a company, every IT company in the country decided that this was a fabulous idea, but we don't want to do it. Just imagine starting an entire organization and being told by the industry that you are finding faults in our systems. We do not believe that we need to do this yet, right? And from then on, went on a very difficult journey. A journey where today, I must say, we're profitable, and it's doable, called newshook.com, which is the only media site in India which is inclusive to people with disabilities. Do you know that one of my employees called Shalaka can't watch the news every day because it doesn't have sign language interpretation or it is not captioned? So she actually has zero access to the same news that you and I have. Do you know that my friend Ketan can't read a newspaper because it's in print, and because most of the websites out there by the news media houses do not work with the screen reader software that he uses, right? So when we went, everybody said, they're not our market. We don't address their needs. So what did we do? We said we had to prove a point once again. And we went and started the first media house, which looks at disability. And we run a sign language newsroom, which is run by deaf people. That's inclusion, right? Can we make it? Yes, we can. Can we make a sustainable model of it? I believe we will be able to. But does that mean we don't try? Does it mean that we are allowed to create a discriminating world out there? For especially, people like you and me out there, the conversation sounds very up there. It feels like, but there's somebody else's. It's not them against us. They are us. Tomorrow, you will be hard of hearing as you age. Tomorrow, you won't be able to walk up the same flight of steps that you can today. Tomorrow, you won't be able to see as well as you can today, right? And believe me, I'm getting there. I surely am. But the reality is, we have to change the switch in our heads, which says it's them, it's not us. We don't face these challenges, they do. Right. So, when you go out there into the world, think about what you can do. Think about how you can build inclusion. It's the smallest thing. It might be that you create a report and you have an image in that report. And how does a blind person see that, right? If they can't see it, can you describe that image for them? Do you know that when you actually put up an image in Twitter, you can add an image description to that image and create that lovely movie? Can you see that it's captioned, right? The choice is in each and every one of our hands. It's about the small things we do that create big impact. When we started, everybody used to doubt this whole space and say, but why is it that this is important? Why is it that we need to do this? But now I'm going to flip it to a commercial question. Do you believe we can ignore 1 billion people in the world if you want to be a global company? Can we? The answer is no, we can't. Can we ignore 100 million people in India who have a disability? 100 million is too big a number, right? So whether you look at it from a social perspective, where you should do, whether you look at it from a business perspective, where there is business value in reaching out to this 100 million people, right? And when you get 100 million, you also get their friends and families. What do? When you go and buy a mobile plan for yourself, right? What do you look at? What's your mom using, right? What's your family member using? Can I be on that same kind of plan so I can call them for free? When you go to a movie, you're not going to tell them sit in a separate theater room and I will sit in a separate room. When you travel, you want to travel together. That's equality. That's inclusion. The problem is we don't look at it from an economic perspective, but I can guarantee you, anybody who looks at the economics of this, right, is missing out if they don't realize that they also shop, they also travel, they also study, and they also do exactly the same thing that you and I do. They also buy clothes. They also buy specs. They want to watch a movie like you and I. So how do we change the paradigm? Can we change the paradigm, right? We believe at Barrier Break we can. We believe that we are doing it. Most of the work that we do creates about 2.5 million, reaches about 2.5 million people in the world, right, every year, and that's impact. But it needs, how many pieces of technology do you touch? Your alarm goes off on your phone, it wakes you up, right? The first thing you probably do is check your WhatsApp before you do anything else, right? You decide to go to school or college or work, you're using technology to decide which train or which taxi, which auto that you want. You're looking at traffic and saying, which is the route that I take, right? You need money, you go to the ATM, right? You want to buy food? Nowadays, so many of the places allow you to walk in, use an app, and order. There is tech everywhere, but it's not for them. It's for you and me. And we need to change that paradigm. It's us. The faster we see it, the better it is going to be. So at Barrier Break, we took a couple of very interesting thoughts and went out in the world. And, like currently, we're creating a currency identifier. Did you know that the Indian notes aren't accessible to disabled people? They can't make out a 200 rupee note from a 100 rupee note. They can't make out a 500 rupee note from a 2000 rupee note. And the challenges are humongous. They started something as simple as that. And technology can change it. When we started doing this entire journey, and even actually today, it's interesting to see that most of the accessibility solutions that people have there come in because of the work done in the international markets, right? You can watch a movie with captioning because of a Netflix, but you can't on an Indian solution, right? You might say, like Sir said earlier on, there is need for policy. There is need for opportunity. There's need for implementation of these ideas. And the day we've got that, inclusion will happen. And believe me, it's the small things. When I started, one of my employees came to me and said, I can't use the microwave in the office. It's not accessible. So what did we do? So I asked him, I said, what do you need? He said, I want braille labels on the thing. So we have a small braille labeler, right? So I said, okay, go make the labels, catch hold of HR, put them on, right? It's not a big cost. He went and trained every other blind person in our organization and taught them how to use the microwave, right? You want to make tea, you don't know when the water should stop because you can't see. Can I put in a water level indicator which just beeps when the water gets to a point? Like this thing's going to beep in some time and tell me I have to stop, right? Possible, doable, is there. Can they make tea? Yes, they can. I know some visually impaired people who make better dosas than I do. That's the opportunity. So I'm going to leave you with a thought. The thought is a very, very simple thought. The thought is, what is it that you can do to make a difference, right? If each of you can just tick mark a particular thing that you can even do today when you go back, that is all I'm really asking for. So with that, I am going to thank all of you for listening. And I do hope that when you go back, you think about what I said and just make a small impact in your life.